Have you ever trusted someone with everything you had, only to realize that they were secretly plotting to take it all away? My name is Avery Cole, and this is my story, the story of betrayal, heartbreak, and how I quietly turned the tables on someone I loved and trusted. I remember the first time I met Logan Hart. He was different from anyone I had ever met. Not the loud, overly confident type, but calm, measured, and surprisingly attentive. There was a quiet intelligence in his eyes, a subtle charm that made people listen when he spoke. I was 23, fresh out of university, still a little naive, but confident enough to recognize sincerity. Everyone around me liked Logan, my friends, my family, even my father. He seemed like someone who could seamlessly become part of my life. My father, Avery Cole, had been a man of discipline and foresight. He had built his wealth from nothing, starting a small chain of businesses that gradually expanded along the West Coast. I grew up watching him work tirelessly, learning that trust was earned, and family always came first. When he passed unexpectedly, I inherited not only his assets but also a legacy of responsibility. Victor had left a meticulously detailed will, properties, stocks, bank accounts, and specific instructions to protect me and my future. At first, Logan seemed supportive. He would sit with me as I read through the will, nodding, asking questions that seemed genuine. But over the weeks, subtle changes in his behavior began to alarm me. He suggested I make quick decisions regarding my inheritance, encouraged joint bank accounts, and casually mentioned knowing a lawyer who could expedite the process. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but my instincts, the ones honed by years of observing my father and handling responsibilities, screamed at me. I confided in my best friend, Lila Warren, who had known me since childhood and had been my anchor through every challenge. "Avery, don't ignore your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is," she said calmly. Her words resonated deeply. "Trust yourself first." I began my own quiet investigation. I scrutinized every document, comparing the original will with the lawyer's records. That's when I noticed small discrepancies, unexplained changes in account permissions, unusual emails sent from Logan's personal address to my family's financial advisors, and subtle suggestions that I sign off on parts of the inheritance prematurely. My chest tightened as realization hit me. Logan wasn't here to support me, he was planning to take advantage of me. I felt a storm of emotions, disbelief, betrayal, fear, but alongside that, a spark of determination. I knew confronting him immediately would be reckless. My father had taught me that strategy and patience are far more powerful than impulsive action. I needed to play this carefully, to outthink him at every turn. I started recording every interaction discreetly, calls, texts, casual conversations. I backed up every email, every document. Lila became my silent partner, monitoring events and helping me anticipate Logan's next moves. I quickly realized that my greatest weapons were patience, vigilance, and the careful collection of evidence. Then came the first real test. Logan suggested we meet at a cafe to review some urgent legal documents. I arrived calm and composed, pretending to trust him completely, while my phone recorded everything discreetly. He handed me a stack of papers, pressing me to sign quickly. I skimmed through them, nodding politely, while mentally noting every inconsistency, every detail that could later serve as proof of his intent. Weeks passed, and we continued this delicate dance. Logan tried subtle manipulation, compliments, guilt trips, pressure, but I maintained my composure. I let him believe I was naive, that I had no idea of his plans. Meanwhile, I strengthened my position, ensuring that if he tried to act, I had undeniable evidence. Logan's confidence grew. One evening, he suggested transferring significant portions of the inheritance to accounts we could both access. I nodded politely, pretending to weigh the idea, all the while consulting my lawyer, who assured me that any such move without my proper consent could be legally challenged. My plan began to take shape. I would let him think he was gaining control, while I quietly built a trap he couldn't escape. I devised a multi-step strategy. 1. Document everything. Every conversation, message, and email would be recorded and stored securely. 2. Decoy compliance. I allowed him small, harmless gains to feed his overconfidence. 3. Legal safeguards. I consulted multiple lawyers to ensure any attempt to manipulate or forge documents would backfire. 4. Psychological control. I let him believe he was in control while I subtly guided every move. Logan's growing confidence blinded him. He became careless, dropping hints about his ambitions to family members, thinking no one was paying attention. I listened quietly, capturing every word. Every action he took was feeding into the trap I had meticulously set. The first major confrontation happened at a private dinner he arranged. Logan wanted to discuss future investments and suggested that I sign over part of the inheritance. I smiled, appearing hesitant and unsure, all while subtly dropping hints about legal counsel and my father's foresight. Logan's composure began to crack, though he tried to mask it. Unbeknownst to him, every word was being recorded and stored safely. I learned to control my emotions, even when my heart screamed in response to his betrayal. I didn't lash out. I didn't show fear. I observed, I noted, and I prepared. Every smile I gave, every nod I offered, was part of the act. I had to appear vulnerable, compliant, and trusting, everything he wanted me to be. Late at night, alone in my room, I reviewed the evidence I had collected. The recordings, the emails, the minor discrepancies in legal documents, all of it painted a clear picture of Logan's intent. He thought he was orchestrating the perfect plan, but in reality, he was walking straight into the trap I had set. I created a false narrative for him, a decoy document indicating that I was willing to consider some of his suggestions. He took the bait, becoming increasingly reckless. Meanwhile, I consulted with legal experts to confirm that any fraudulent action on his part would immediately void any claim he attempted to make. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place. One rainy evening, Logan invited me to his apartment under the pretense of urgency. He handed me a folder of necessary papers and urged immediate signatures. I pretended to hesitate, pretending to struggle with the decision, all while subtly planting my own evidence, ensuring that any attempt to manipulate the documents would be traceable. Lila monitored everything, ready to alert me if anything went wrong. By now, I was no longer just reacting, I was orchestrating. Logan's arrogance and overconfidence became his weakness. I allowed him small victories, creating the illusion that he was in control, while I controlled the narrative. My father's lessons on vigilance, intelligence, and patience had prepared me for this exact scenario. The tension escalated daily. Logan tried new manipulations, each more aggressive than the last. He subtly tested boundaries, attempting to push me further. But every attempt only reinforced my resolve. I responded with measured caution, always recording, always analyzing. The careful equilibrium I maintained kept him unaware of the storm building around him. Finally, the moment arrived where I had all the tools necessary to begin the counterattack. Every interaction, every attempt at deceit, every subtle threat, was now documented. I had legal safeguards, witness statements, digital recordings, and psychological leverage. The pieces were all in place. I sat in my father's study late at night, surrounded by his documents, files, and my own carefully compiled evidence. The rain tapped softly against the window, mirroring the tension in my chest. I whispered to myself, feeling a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and anticipation. He thinks he's winning. He thinks he has me fooled. But little does he know. I've already set the stage. And when the time comes, he will realize that I was always one step ahead. The night Avery had set her plan into motion, the house felt colder than usual. Shadows stretched across the walls as she sat alone in her room, carefully reviewing every detail she had gathered. Logan had no idea that his overconfidence was Avery's greatest weapon. He had thought that by charming her parents and slyly manipulating her, he had the upper hand, but Avery had seen through every smile, every calculated gesture, and every subtle lie. Tonight, she would turn that knowledge into action. Avery's mind raced through the events that had led her here. It had started with small betrayals, Logan asking about her father's will under the guise of curiosity, pretending to help her with legal documents, asking about her finances for advice. At first, Avery had trusted him, thinking they were siblings sharing concerns, but a nagging unease had grown over weeks. Then, the phone call from her mother, vague and urgent, had tipped her off. Logan had been trying to push Avery out of her own life, and it was happening quietly, almost imperceptibly. Avery took a deep breath, feeling her heart pound in anticipation. She pulled out a thick folder from under her bed, a folder she had been compiling in secret. Every email Logan had sent to financial advisors, every message he had tried to delete from family accounts, every instance of him trying to convince her to hand over access to their joint inheritance, everything was there, neatly organized. Avery felt a grim satisfaction, the kind only comes to someone who knows they are finally in control. The next morning, Avery feigned calmness as she entered the family estate's library where Logan was already going through files he thought were hidden from her. He looked up, his grin confident, unaware that the tide was about to turn. "Morning, Avery. Thought you'd sleep in," he said, leaning lazily against the oak table. "I've been going over the property documents. Thought you'd like to see them too." Avery smiled sweetly, hiding the storm inside her. "Thanks, Logan. That's very thoughtful." She moved closer, picking up a pen and pretending to examine the documents he had carelessly laid out. Her fingers brushed over a hidden recorder she had planted the night before, and she felt a thrill knowing that every word Logan spoke today would be documented. "You've done so much for me lately," she said softly. "I feel like I should be thanking you instead." Logan laughed, a sound Avery had once found comforting. "You don't have to thank me, Avery. I do it because I care. You know that." His eyes flickered briefly with arrogance, a spark that Avery had learned to recognize. It was his undoing. For hours Avery engaged Logan in mundane conversation, peppering questions that made him reveal more than he intended. "How did you get that lawyer to agree to draft changes to the trust?" she asked casually. "Was it easy convincing them it was just for precaution?" Logan's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then he laughed it off, thinking she was naive. But Avery's recorder captured every incriminating detail, his voice dripping with self-assured manipulation. She had been patient, and now every lie would be evidence against him. By evening, Avery had enough material to confront Logan. She invited him to the estate's grand hall, under the pretense of a small celebration for their family's legacy. The chandeliers cast glittering reflections across the polished floors, and the atmosphere was deceptively cheerful. Logan arrived, impeccably dressed, unaware of the trap. He had been thinking of subtle ways to push Avery aside even during the celebration, but he underestimated her resolve. Avery began the gathering with warmth, thanking everyone for their presence, making Logan feel included. She had rehearsed her lines, each word designed to disarm him while drawing the attention of the guests subtly toward his actions. "I was thinking about how lucky I am," Avery said, voice soft but commanding. "Lucky to have family who cares, and friends who support me." Her eyes locked on Logan for a brief second, making him feel a strange unease. Avery had learned that body language could communicate louder than words, and she used it masterfully. When the moment was right, Avery invited the family lawyer to speak, pretending to review the inheritance details casually. Logan's smile faltered as he realized the lawyer was about to disclose certain matters he hadn't anticipated. Avery had spent weeks subtly prompting the lawyer to revisit the documents, to highlight irregularities Logan had tried to exploit. The lawyer, unaware of Avery's entire plan, naturally followed protocol, bringing every suspicious action to light. "Mr. Hart," the lawyer said formally, "there appear to have been several unauthorized attempts to access financial accounts and influence inheritance decisions without the consent of Miss Cole." A hush fell over the room. Logan's face went pale. Avery's heart beat steadily, every thump a testament to her calculated patience. She watched Logan shift uncomfortably, realizing too late that his attempts to deceive were now fully exposed. Avery remained composed, her voice calm but pointed as she added, "Logan, I trusted you. I thought we were family. But it seems your loyalty was only to yourself." The room's eyes were on him, and Avery could see the realization dawning. Logan had underestimated her intelligence, her patience, and her determination. Every friend, every relative, every associate present witnessed the moment of revelation. Logan tried to protest, but the evidence Avery had compiled spoke louder than any excuses he could muster. Over the next few days, Avery carefully guided the legal process, ensuring that Logan's attempts at manipulation were fully documented and addressed. She met with advisors, her meticulous records impressing even the most skeptical professionals. Logan attempted to regain control, but Avery's foresight had anticipated every move. He realized too late that Avery had not only defended her inheritance but also set up safeguards against any future attempts. Yet Avery's plan did not end with legal triumph. She understood that real victory was not only in documentation and legal processes but also in reclaiming the personal power Logan had tried to strip from her. She began subtly restructuring her life, taking control of family businesses, financial assets, and her personal choices with a confidence that radiated strength. Her friends noticed the transformation. Avery was no longer the trusting, cautious young woman who had almost been deceived. She had emerged as a strategic, resilient, and empowered figure. The next week, Avery orchestrated a small social gathering, ostensibly to celebrate the family's continued success and unity. Logan attended, still unaware of the full scope of her power. Avery engaged him with civility, her demeanor calm yet commanding. "It's wonderful to see everyone together," she said, pouring drinks for the guests. Every gesture was measured, every word designed to remind Logan subtly of his defeat. He tried to regain composure, but Avery's presence was overwhelming. She had taken control not with anger, but with intelligence and patience. During the gathering, Avery initiated private conversations with key associates who had previously been aligned with Logan. She presented facts and records gently, allowing them to recognize Logan's manipulations without confrontation. Slowly, loyalty shifted. People who had admired or followed Logan began to see Avery as the rightful leader, the one with clarity and integrity. Logan, now isolated and exposed, realized that his overconfidence had been his greatest flaw. He had believed he could control everyone with charm and deceit, but Avery's patience and intelligence had unraveled him completely. By the end of the month, Avery had not only secured her inheritance but also strengthened her personal and social position. Her relationships, previously strained by Logan's betrayal, were repaired and fortified through transparency and trust. Avery had proven to herself, and everyone around her, that resilience, intelligence, and strategic thinking could overcome even the most personal betrayals. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not of revenge born from anger, but of empowerment born from patience, foresight, and unwavering resolve. Avery's story became an example among her peers and family, a testament to the strength of young women who refused to be undermined, who reclaimed control of their lives with grace and intelligence. Logan, humbled and marginalized, learned the consequences of deceit, while Avery stepped into a future defined by her own decisions and her own strength. Yet, deep inside, Avery knew the journey was more than just winning back an inheritance. It was about reclaiming trust, understanding her own worth, and setting boundaries that could never again be crossed. She realized that true power lay not in punishing others, but in mastering oneself, in cultivating patience, and in using intelligence as a shield and a sword. Every choice she made thereafter was informed by this experience, shaping her into a person who could face life's challenges with confidence, insight, and resilience. The tension had been building for weeks. Avery Cole could feel it in her bones every time she walked through the grand hallways of the Hart estate. The paintings on the walls seemed to watch her, and the marble floors echoed with every step she took. After the confrontation with Logan in Part 2, Avery knew she was on the verge of something monumental. She couldn't afford to slip up now. This was her inheritance, her family's legacy, and Logan had tried to take it from her with a cold, calculated heart. But Avery wasn't just any ordinary heiress. She had grown up watching her parents fight for their dreams, and she had learned resilience in ways Logan could never imagine. That morning, Avery woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight barely peeked through the heavy curtains, casting streaks of gold across her room. She had hardly slept the night before. The anxiety and anticipation had kept her tossing and turning. Her mind replayed the argument with Logan over and over. He had smiled that smug, condescending smile, thinking he had already won, but Avery had outsmarted him in the meeting with the lawyers. She could still remember the way his jaw tightened when she revealed the clause that invalidated his claim. She smiled faintly, though, because she knew he hadn't realized the full extent of her plan. Logan was arrogant, and arrogance made people blind. Avery had learned that early, and she intended to use it to her advantage. She dressed carefully that morning, choosing a tailored navy suit that gave her both authority and elegance. Every accessory, every detail, was intentional. She wasn't just preparing for a meeting, she was preparing for battle. Her assistant, Clara, noticed her intense focus. "Big day today, Avery?" Clara asked, trying to mask her curiosity. "Very big," Avery replied, her voice calm but firm. "It's the final step. Logan doesn't know what's coming, and that's exactly how it should be." Clara nodded, understanding that Avery was not joking. This wasn't just a dispute over money or property, it was a matter of proving who deserved the legacy, who had the right to carry on the family name. Avery had spent years preparing herself mentally and strategically for this moment. Logan thought it was just about legal documents and signatures, but it was far more intricate. Avery had spent months gathering evidence, understanding the loopholes, and positioning herself in a way that Logan could never anticipate. She had made silent allies within the board, allies who trusted her vision and believed in her integrity. By the time Logan realized what had happened, it would be too late for him to recover. Arriving at the estate, Avery felt a mix of excitement and tension. She could hear the distant hum of the city outside, oblivious to the drama unfolding within these walls. She walked through the grand foyer with measured steps, her heels clicking rhythmically against the polished floor. As she entered the office where the board of trustees and the family lawyers were gathered, Logan was already there. He looked the same as ever, confident, smug, entirely convinced of his victory. Avery felt a pang of satisfaction. The perfect beginning to the endgame. "Good morning, Avery," Logan said smoothly, his tone dripping with faux cordiality. "I trust you slept well?" Avery met his gaze steadily, unflinching. "I did. Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. "And I hope you slept well, too, because today is the day we settle everything." The board members exchanged glances, sensing the tension but unsure of what was coming. Avery smiled inwardly. The uncertainty was her ally. Logan, however, remained oblivious, smiling as though the world still revolved around his whims. Avery began presenting her case, not just with words but with evidence meticulously organized. Each document, each testimony, each financial record painted a clear picture. Logan's claim was not just unjust, it was fraudulent. Avery's parents had left specific instructions, meticulously detailed, to ensure the family legacy remained intact. Avery highlighted every clause, every exception, and every loophole Logan had overlooked. With each point, Logan's smug demeanor faltered slightly. He tried to interrupt, to assert dominance, but Avery had anticipated his tactics. She had rehearsed counterarguments, prepared responses, and even anticipated the subtle psychological games he might attempt. By the time she finished her presentation, the board members were nodding in approval, impressed by the thoroughness and clarity of her case. Logan, realizing the gravity of the situation, leaned back in his chair, his confident facade beginning to crack. You planned all of this?" he asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and frustration. Avery's smile was both gentle and victorious. "Yes, Logan. Every step. You underestimated me because you thought I was naive, or too emotional to think strategically. But I've learned from the best, and that includes learning from your mistakes." The room was silent for a moment. The weight of Avery's words settled over everyone like a tangible presence. Logan's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was none. Avery had outmaneuvered him completely. The lawyers confirmed every point she had made, validating her claims and dismissing Logan's attempts to manipulate the situation. It was a decisive victory. Avery's heart swelled, not with revenge, but with the satisfaction of justice being served. After the meeting, Avery stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the estate gardens. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. She took a deep breath, letting the calm wash over her. Logan's attempts to steal her inheritance had failed, but Avery knew the battle was more than legal, it was personal. It was about proving to herself that she could stand firm, that she could protect her family's legacy and honor without compromise. She had done it. And now, it was time to look forward, not back. But life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges, even in moments of triumph. Avery knew that Logan wouldn't give up so easily. His pride and ego were too great to allow him to simply accept defeat. She anticipated his next move, mentally preparing herself for whatever tactics he might employ. Avery had learned that true strength wasn't just about winning, it was about staying vigilant, anticipating every possible outcome, and maintaining integrity even when others faltered. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Avery took charge of the estate's affairs, implementing changes her parents had envisioned for years. She met with the staff, the board, and even investors, carefully ensuring that every decision aligned with her vision. The sense of accomplishment was immense, but Avery remained grounded. She knew that success wasn't just about securing wealth or property, it was about leadership, responsibility, and staying true to one's values. Logan, meanwhile, tried subtle maneuvers, attempting to regain influence. But Avery had allies now, people who respected her judgment and recognized her dedication. Every attempt he made was countered with finesse, with strategy, and with a calm confidence that left him increasingly frustrated. One evening, as Avery walked through the estate gardens, Logan approached her, unannounced. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a flicker of something unfamiliar, respect, perhaps, or maybe reluctant admiration. "You really did outsmart me," he said quietly. "I didn't think you had it in you." Avery regarded him calmly, sensing both the sincerity and the remnants of pride in his tone. "It wasn't about outsmarting you, Logan. It was about protecting what matters and standing up for what's right. You'll learn that eventually." He nodded slowly, a small, almost imperceptible gesture of acknowledgement. "Maybe I have. Maybe I have." Avery smiled softly, feeling a sense of closure. The journey had been tumultuous, filled with tension, uncertainty, and personal growth. She had faced betrayal, challenges, and the complexities of family dynamics, and emerged not just victorious but wiser, stronger, and more resilient. The inheritance was safe, yes, but Avery had gained something far more valuable: self-assurance, clarity, and the knowledge that she could navigate life's most difficult challenges with grace and determination. In the weeks that followed, Avery focused on expanding the family legacy in ways her parents had dreamed. She initiated charitable projects, revamped the estate's management, and even mentored young professionals in the community, fostering a sense of empowerment and responsibility. Logan, though initially resistant, eventually came to respect her decisions, realizing that her vision was not just about maintaining wealth, but about creating meaningful impact. Their interactions became professional, respectful, and occasionally cordial, a far cry from the tension that had once defined their relationship. Avery often reflected on the lessons learned during this journey. She realized that life was unpredictable, filled with trials that tested character and resolve. But she also understood that preparation, strategic thinking, and integrity were the keys to overcoming even the most daunting obstacles. The inheritance, the estate, and the legacy were all symbols of her perseverance, but the true victory lay in the growth she had achieved as a person. Every challenge, every confrontation, and every difficult decision had shaped her into someone capable of leading with wisdom, empathy, and unwavering determination. By the time the estate fully stabilized under her leadership, Avery had become more than just an heiress, she had become a role model, an example of resilience and strategic brilliance. Friends, family, and colleagues admired her not just for securing her inheritance, but for the way she handled adversity with grace and intelligence. The story of her confrontation with Logan Hart became something of a legend among the community, an inspiring tale of how determination, foresight, and moral fortitude could triumph over deception, arrogance, and greed. Avery's journey wasn't just about revenge, it was about transformation. She had turned betrayal into motivation, challenges into opportunities, and fear into empowerment. Logan, too, had learned valuable lessons, understanding that respect and acknowledgement of others' abilities were far more significant than ego-driven ambitions. Their rivalry evolved into a cautious respect, a dynamic built on experience, reflection, and mutual recognition of each other's strengths. As the sun set over the estate, casting warm golden hues across the landscape, Avery stood at the balcony once more. The wind tousled her hair, carrying with it the sense of success, growth, and renewal. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she also knew that she had the tools, the mindset, and the courage to face them head-on. The legacy was secure, the inheritance protected, and Avery Cole had emerged not just victorious, but transformed, a young woman capable of navigating the complexities of life, love, and family with intelligence, resilience, and grace.